Dave, please note that I'm beginning my final report on Shadow Anomaly Case 4281, Dr. Max Ripley announced to his AI assistant, trying to sound professional while picking space nachos out of his beard. The date is whatever date the station computer says it is, because honestly I stopped keeping track after we passed through that temporal anomaly last month. Noted, Dr. Ripley. Dave responded in his perpetually chipper voice, though I feel compelled to mention that you have crumbs in your beard. Again, and that was actually a spatial anomaly, not temporal. You just overslept. For 3 days. Max brushed at his beard self-consciously. The crumbs are irrelevant to the scientific record, Dave, and I maintain that time moved differently that week. He cleared his throat and continued, as the lead xenobiologist on Galactic Research Station 42, I never expected to make a discovery that would fundamentally change our understanding of human physiology. Especially not while I was trying to win the station's annual limbo competition. You placed last, sir. Thank you, Dave. I'm aware, Max sighed, remembering how his catastrophic limbo attempt had led to this breakthrough. But losing spectacularly turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to my research career. Because when I fell flat on my back under those fluorescent lights, surrounded by laughing aliens, I noticed something odd. My shadow wasn't behaving like anyone else's. To be precise, Dave interjected, your shadow appeared to be giving the other shadows a rather rude gesture, despite your arms being firmly planted on the ground at the time. Exactly. While every other species' shadows did exactly what they were supposed to do, the boring old mirror your movements thing human shadows occasionally showed. Creative interpretation of their duties. Max pulled up the holographic footage he'd collected over the past 3 months. Hundreds of examples flickered through the air, human shadows scratching their heads while their owners stood still, human shadows doing little jigs during serious diplomatic meetings. And one particularly memorable instance of Ambassador Thompson's shadow making shadow puppets during the Galactic Council's annual budget review. The really fascinating part, Max continued, is that no one seemed to notice before. Or if they did, they didn't think it was worth mentioning. Can you imagine? Centuries of interspecies contact, and not one alien thought to say, hey, humans, your shadows are kind of weird. Perhaps they were being polite, sir. Much like how no one mentions your habit of talking to your lunch. I don't talk to my lunch, Dave. I negotiate with it. Some of these alien cuisines are still technically alive when served. Max straightened his lab coat, which had seen better days, and was sporting several questionable stains from said negotiations. Besides, this discovery is huge. We need to figure out why human shadows behave differently. Think of the implications. I calculate approximately 2,847 potential implications, ranging from mildly concerning to existential crisis-inducing. Would you like me to list them in order of how likely they are to cause widespread panic? Not now, Dave. Max was already pacing, his shadow doing an interpretive dance behind him. We need to approach this systematically. Set up meetings with representatives from every major species on the station, and get me more space nachos. Science requires snacks. Of course, sir. Though I feel obligated to point out that your shadow is currently doing the Macarena. Max whirled around to look, but his shadow quickly resumed its normal position. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. No other species' shadows have this much personality, noted Dr. Ripley. I've scheduled the meetings and ordered more nachos. I've also taken the liberty of preparing a presentation titled Why Human Shadows Might Be Secretly Plotting Something. Would you like me to revise that title? No, Dave, that's perfect. Nothing gets other species' attention like a bit of mild paranoia. Max grinned, watching as his shadow appeared to be doing a crossword puzzle. We're going to crack this mystery wide open, and hopefully not cause an interstellar incident in the process. Based on your previous research projects, sir, I calculate the chances of avoiding an interstellar incident to be approximately 12.3%. Those are better odds than my last project. Remember the tentacle incident? I've been specifically programmed not to remember the tentacle incident, sir. For everyone's mental well-being. Max nodded sagely. Probably for the best. Now, let's go make scientific history, right after I finish these nachos. His shadow gave him a thumbs up, even though both his hands were occupied with the snack bowl. The next morning, or what passed for morning on a space station with artificially regulated day cycles, Max stood before an assembled group of scientists. His presentation screen displayed a series of increasingly concerning shadow behaviors, while Dave hovered nearby, documenting everything with his usual mechanical precision. As you can see from Exhibit A, Max gestured toward a video of a human diplomat whose shadow was clearly doing a crossword puzzle. These anomalies occur regardless of the human subject's conscious activity. Chief Science Officer Kl'thar clicked her mandibles thoughtfully, all four of her compound eyes fixed on the presentation. Her own shadow, perfectly proper, mimicked her posture exactly. Fascinating, Dr. Ripley. Though I must question your methodology. Are you certain this isn't simply a result of sleep deprivation and excessive nacho consumption? I assure you, Chief, I conducted these observations under strict scientific conditions, Max replied, pretending not to notice his shadow making bunny ears behind Kl'thar's head. Dave, show them the synchronized footage. Certainly, Sir. Dave projected a split-screen display showing 20 different humans going about their daily routines. Note how the shadow anomalies appear to occur at random intervals, with no correlation to the subject's activities, emotional states, or proximity to the cafeteria's Mystery Meat Mondays. The assembled scientists murmured as they watched human shadows wave to each other across rooms, play rock, paper, scissors during important meetings, and in one particularly noteworthy case, perform a complete recreation of a classical ballet while its owner was sound asleep. Most intriguing, said Dr. P. Zorp, a gelatinous blob who specialized in quantum physics, is the fact that these shadows appear to maintain consistent personalities across multiple observations. Ambassador Thompson's shadow, for instance, seems to have a particular fondness for mime performances. Exactly, Max exclaimed, a bit too enthusiastically, causing several scientists to flinch. Sorry, got excited there. But look at this pattern we've discovered. He pulled up a chart that David had helped him prepare. The shadow activities seem to reflect aspects of the human subconscious personality. The more creative the human, the more expressive their shadow becomes. Kl'thar rose from her seat, her segmented limbs moving with precise grace. Dr. Ripley, while your observations are compelling, they raise serious concerns. If human shadows can act independently, what are the implications for security, for physics, for our annual station talent show? The talent show is next week, Sir. Dave helpfully interjected. And I've already registered your shadow for the interpretive dance category. Not now, Dave, Max hissed, though he had to admit his shadow's choreography had been improving lately. Chief Kl'thar, I understand your concerns. That's why we need to expand our investigation. We need to study more humans under controlled conditions. More humans, Dr. P. Zorp quivered anxiously. Isn't our current human population causing enough chaos? Yesterday I observed a human child's shadow building a fort out of other shadows while the child was taking a nap. That's exactly the kind of data we need. Max pulled up another slide. Look at these readings. When human shadows interact with non-human shadows, they seem to briefly affect the quantum field around them. It's as if they're teaching other shadows how to misbehave. The room erupted in concerned chittering, buzzing, and in Dr. P. Zorp's case, nervous jiggling. Kl'thar raised all four arms for silence. Dr. Ripley, your research has identified a potentially significant phenomenon. However, we must proceed with caution. I'm authorizing the formation of a special task force to study these shadow anomalies. And, she paused, mandibles twitching slightly, I'm implementing mandatory shadow monitoring for all human station residents. Excellent, Max beamed, while his shadow did a victory dance. I'll need additional equipment, more research assistants, and possibly a larger nacho budget. Sir. Dave interrupted. I feel compelled to point out that your shadow is currently attempting to start a conga line with the other scientists' shadows. Indeed, Max's shadow had detached itself from his feet and was trying to convince Kl'thar's perfectly behaved shadow to join in. The mantis-like alien's shadow remained stubbornly proper, but a few of the other scientists' shadows seemed to be wavering, showing the first signs of independent movement. Most disturbing, Kl'thar commented, watching as her shadow gave an almost imperceptible twitch. Dr. Ripley, contain your shadow immediately. We can't risk this behavior spreading. That's just it, Chief Max said excitedly. I don't think we can contain it. And more importantly, I don't think we should. This could be the key to understanding something fundamental about human consciousness. Dave, show them the correlation data. Displaying now, sir. Though I should mention that your shadow is currently attempting to teach the other shadows how to do the electric slide. The room descended into chaos as scientists scrambled to control their increasingly restless shadows. Kl'thar's shadow, despite her best efforts, had begun tapping one foot rhythmically. Dr. P-Zorb's usually amorphous shadow had somehow formed itself into a perfect square, just to be contrary. Perhaps Kl'thar said with resigned dignity, we should continue this discussion after implementing some basic shadow containment protocols. And Dr. Ripley. Yes, Chief. Eve. Please ask your shadow to stop trying to start a wave. Some of us are trying to maintain professional decorum. Max nodded, though he couldn't help but feel a bit proud. His shadow had finally managed to get Dr. P-Zorb's shadow to join the conga line. Dave, make a note, he whispered. Day 1 of official shadow research chaos achieved. Noted, sir. Shall I also note that your shadow is now teaching the others to moonwalk? Absolutely. For science, of course. Of course, sir. For science. Word of the shadow investigation spread through Galactic Research Station 42 faster than a quantum hiccup, spawning theories that ranged from mildly plausible to absolutely bonkers. Max found himself cornered in the cafeteria by Dr. Yix, a floating cloud of sentient gas who insisted on sharing his latest hypothesis. It's obvious, isn't it? Dr. Yix puffed excitedly, his gaseous form turning a vibrant shade of purple. Humans must be multidimensional beings who forgot to properly sync their shadows during their last software update. That's... Creative Max replied diplomatically, watching as his shadow pretended to take notes. But humans don't actually run on software. That's exactly what someone who needed a software update would say. Before Max could respond, Dave's holographic form materialized beside him. Dr. Ripley, Professor Luna Martinez has arrived at the station. She's waiting in your lab, and I believe she's already catalogued 3 new shadow behaviors that violate the known laws of physics. Thank goodness, Max muttered, excusing himself from Dr. Yix, who was now convinced that human shadows were actually tiny dimensional rifts shaped like people. He arrived at his lab to find Professor Martinez already deep in conversation with Chief Kl'thar. Luna Martinez was exactly what you'd expect from Earth's foremost expert on shadow behavior, brilliant, eccentric, and completely unfazed by the fact that her shadow was currently conducting an invisible orchestra. Dr. Ripley, she called out, her eyes bright with excitement. Your research has finally brought this into the open. Do you know how long we've been sitting on this information? Max asked, dodging as a Vraxian physicist rushed past, convinced his shadow had just stolen his wallet. The Shadow Observation Society, Luna explained, pulling up ancient files on her tablet. We've been documenting these anomalies for centuries, but nobody would take us seriously. They all thought we were just a bunch of crazy scientists who had spent too much time staring at shadows. Which, to be fair, you were, Dave commented helpfully. Well, yes, Luna admitted, but we were right. Look at these records. She displayed images dating back hundreds of years, Renaissance paintings showing oddly positioned shadows, Victorian photographs with clearly misaligned silhouettes, and one particularly interesting cave painting of what appeared to be a prehistoric human's shadow doing handstands. Kl'thar's mandibles clicked rapidly, the mantis equivalent of a worried frown. Are you saying humans have always known about this? Not exactly, Luna said. Most humans just ignored it. You know how we are. If something weird happens, we just shrug and add it to the list of things we'll worry about later, right after we figure out why cats purr and why toast always lands butter side down. Speaking of falling objects, Dave interrupted. The station's artificial gravity is being affected by concentrated shadow activity in Section C. It seems several human shadows are trying to teach alien shadows how to breakdance. The tension in the station was becoming palpable. In the corridors, alien scientists whispered theories to each other. Humans were obviously hiding advanced shadow manipulation technology. No, wait, humans were actually fourth-dimensional beings wearing three-dimensional disguises. Or perhaps, as one particularly panicked Zorblogian suggested, human shadows were actually the real humans, and the physical bodies were just elaborate puppets. This is getting out of hand, Max said, watching as a group of alien researchers hurried past his lab, all wearing what appeared to be shadow-proof suits. Luna, in all your research, did you ever figure out why this happens? We had theories, she replied, absent-mindedly straightening her lab coat while her shadow appeared to be solving complex equations in the air. The most promising one suggests it's related to human creativity and imagination. Our shadows seem to express aspects of our subconscious minds. That would explain the interpretive dance during budget meetings, Dave mused. Kl'thar, who had been quietly observing her own shadow, which had recently developed a slight tendency to tap dance, spoke up. The Council is concerned. Some species are calling for all humans to be equipped with shadow suppressors. Shadow suppressors, Max and Luna exclaimed simultaneously, while their shadows performed a perfectly synchronized look of outrage. Out of the question, Luna continued. We have no idea what suppressing this behavior might do to human psychology. Besides, the shadows aren't dangerous. They're just expressive. Tell that to the hive mind of Sector 7, Dave chimed in. They're convinced human shadows are plotting to steal their collective consciousness. They've started wearing aluminum foil hats. The hive mind is a cloud of psychic bacteria, Max pointed out. They're always convinced someone's trying to steal their consciousness. Nevertheless, Kl'thar insisted, we need answers. Real answers, not just theories about dimensional glitches or forgotten software updates. As if to emphasize the point, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Dave's holographic form flickered with concern. Sir, we may have a situation. It appears that all the shadows in the station's main conference room have gone on strike. Max, Luna, and Kl'thar exchanged looks while their shadows, even Kl'thar's usually well-behaved one, gave each other knowing winks. Things were about to get interesting. The shadow strike turned out to be just the beginning. Within hours, the station erupted into what Dave officially classified as chaos level. Oh dear. The shadows are organizing, Max reported to an emergency council meeting, trying to maintain his professional demeanor, despite his shadow doing the robot behind him. They've formed unions, started book clubs, and I'm pretty sure they're planning a production of Les Miserables. This is unacceptable, Ambassador Zeke's gelatinous form quivered with indignation. All 17 of their eye stalks focused on Max. My shadow just handed in a letter of resignation. A shadow can't resign. It's literally bound to me by the laws of physics. About those laws, Luna interjected, her fingers flying over her tablet as she compiled data. We've been thinking about this all wrong. Look at these readings. She projected a series of charts into the air. The shadow anomalies aren't random, they're directly correlated with human creative output. The assembled aliens watched as Luna's shadow helpfully pointed out key data points with a shadow laser pointer it had apparently manifested out of nowhere. When humans engage in creative activities, she continued, their shadows become more autonomous. The more imaginative the human, the more independent their shadow becomes. And here's the really interesting part, it's contagious. Contagious. Kl'thar's mandibles clicked in alarm. Are you suggesting human creativity is infecting other species' shadows? In a manner of speaking, Max jumped in, excitement overriding his usual awkwardness. We've documented cases of non-human shadows beginning to exhibit independent behavior after prolonged exposure to human shadows. It's like they're learning to think outside the box. Speaking of boxes, Dave interrupted. The shadows in Storage Bay 3 have constructed a replica of the Parthenon entirely out of shadow boxes. I must say, their architectural skills are impressive. Ambassador Zeke's topmost eye stalks curled in frustration. This is a crisis. My shadow has started taking dance lessons from Ambassador Thompson's shadow. During critical diplomatic negotiations, it keeps attempting to perform what I believe humans call the worm. As if to demonstrate, Zizi's shadow broke into a surprisingly smooth series of dance moves. Several other council members' shadows began tapping their feet appreciatively. Wait a minute, Luna said suddenly, her eyes widening. Max, remember that temporal anomaly you mentioned? The one that Dave said was actually just you oversleeping. For the last time, I maintain that time moved differently that week. What if you were right? Not about oversleeping, she added quickly, but about time moving differently. Look at this. She pulled up footage from the station's quantum sensors. The shadow anomalies are causing tiny fluctuations in the space-time continuum. Max stared at the data, his shadow leaning in to look as well. Of course, humans aren't just affecting shadows, we're unconsciously manipulating quantum fields through our creative energy. That's preposterous, Ambassador Zeeks bubbled skeptically. Creativity can't affect quantum mechanics. Actually, Dave chimed in, I've been running some calculations. When humans imagine something, they create a sort of quantum resonance. Their shadows are simply the most visible manifestation of this effect. The room erupted into chaos as everyone tried to speak at once. Kl'thar had to bang her gavel with all four arms to restore order. Are you suggesting, she asked, her compound eyes fixed on Luna and Max, that human imagination literally warps reality? On a quantum level, yes, Luna confirmed. Our shadows aren't misbehaving, they're expressing quantum possibilities that our creative minds generate unconsciously. This explains everything, Max exclaimed. The shadow choreography, the independent movements, even Dr. P. Zorp's shadow deciding to become a geometry enthusiast. Our creativity is leaking into the quantum realm, and our shadows are just going with the flow. Just then, the station's lights flickered ominously. Dave's holographic form sparkled with static. I hate to interrupt this breakthrough, the AI said, but it appears the combined creative energy of all the human shadows has begun affecting the station's quantum field generators. We're experiencing some unusual effects. As if on cue, gravity in the council chamber reversed itself. The assembled dignitaries found themselves floating toward the ceiling, while their shadows remained firmly on the floor below, several of them now engaged in what appeared to be a spirited game of charades. Don't panic, Max called out, doing his best to look dignified while floating upside down. This just proves our theory. Luna, what's the highest concentration of human creative activity on the station right now? Luna consulted her tablet, which was also floating. The shadows are putting on their production of Les Miserables in the main atrium. They've just reached one day more. Of course they have, Max sighed. Dave, can you calculate how many quantum fluctuations a shadow musical might generate? Calculating now, sir. Though I feel compelled to mention that your shadow is currently auditioning for a role in the ensemble. Ambassador Zizix, who had formed themselves into a floating sphere of agitation, demanded, well, what are you going to do about this? Max and Luna exchanged looks, then broke into identical grins as the same idea hit them both. Their shadows high-fived each other. We don't stop it, Luna said excitedly. We embrace it. Exactly, Max agreed. We've been trying to suppress and control this phenomenon when we should have been. Learning to direct it, they finished in unison, while their shadows began excitedly sketching out equations in the air. Below them, the shadow performance of Les Miserables reached its crescendo, and the station's artificial gravity fluctuated in perfect rhythm with the music. Attention, all station personnel, Max's voice echoed through the intercom. We've figured it out. The good news is we're not breaking physics. The better news is we're actually inventing new physics. The bad news is, well, we might have accidentally taught shadows how to manipulate quantum fields. He stood in the main control room with Luna, Dave, and an increasingly anxious group of alien scientists. The station had finally stopped doing gravitational somersaults, but now all the shadows were gathered in the atrium, apparently holding some sort of quantum physics symposium. Let me get this straight, Ambassador Zizix burbled, their gelatinous form rippling with concern. Human creativity generates quantum fluctuations, which your shadows have learned to harness, and now they're teaching other shadows how to do it. Precisely, Luna beamed, while her shadow drew complex equations in the air. Humans have always shaped reality through imagination, we just never realized we were doing it literally. Our shadows were the only ones honest enough to show it. I've analyzed the quantum field data, Dave projected a complex holographic model. Every time a human imagines something, they create tiny tears in the fabric of reality. Not enough to cause problems, usually, but enough for shadows to slip through and express themselves. Kl'thar clicked incredulously. My shadow just submitted a grant proposal for quantum choreography research. Actually, Max pointed out, that's a pretty solid proposal. The quantum entanglement interpretive dance section is particularly innovative. The news spread through the galactic community like a quantum hiccup. Reactions varied wildly by species. The hive mind of Sector 7 immediately began manufacturing industrial quantities of aluminum foil, convinced that human creativity might be contagious through psychic transmission. The logarithmic monks of Sigma 9 declared humans to be living proof of their theorem that reality was just a shadow of imagination, then had to take a collective meditation break when their shadows started proposing alternative mathematical theories. The Quantum Council of 11 Dimensions issued an official statement declaring humans to be reality artists and requesting that they please stop teaching shadows about parallel universes, as it's making the multiverse very difficult to organize. "But this is wonderful," Luna exclaimed, watching as a group of shadows demonstrated quantum tunneling by playing leapfrog through solid walls. "Think of the possibilities for science, for art, for interdimensional shadow theater." "Speaking of theater," Dave interrupted, "the shadow production of Les Miserables was such a success that they're now planning to perform cats. Several non-human shadows have already started practicing their quantum purring." Ambassador Zizix's eye stalks all curved into question marks. "How do we know this won't lead to the complete breakdown of reality as we know it?" "Oh, that's already happening," Max said cheerfully, "but in a very controlled, mostly artistic way." Look, he pointed to where several shadows were collaborating on what appeared to be a quantum finger painting of the universe. The station's quantum sensors started beeping frantically. On the main screen, reality itself appeared to be developing ripples, like a pond disturbed by creative stones. "Don't worry," Luna assured the panicking aliens. "This is just the universe adjusting to the fact that we finally noticed what we've been doing all along. Humans have been unconsciously reshaping reality since we first learned to imagine things. Our shadows just got tired of pretending they couldn't." "But what does this mean for the galactic community?" Kl'thar demanded, while her shadow attempted to calculate the quantum mechanics of interpretive dance. "It means," Max explained, ducking as a shadow butterfly fluttered past, leaving quantum sparkles in its wake, "that humans aren't just another spacefaring species. We're natural reality hackers. Our imagination doesn't just inspire us to create, it literally creates." The assembled aliens watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as human shadows began teaching their shadows the basics of quantum manipulation. Soon the station was filled with shadows experimenting with their new abilities: Vraxian shadows learning to fold space-time into origami, Zorblogian shadows practicing quantum juggling, and one particularly ambitious hive mind shadow attempting to calculate the quantum mechanics of a perfect souffle. "I've completed my analysis," Dave announced. "At the current rate of shadow enlightenment, we can expect total quantum awareness among all species shadows within approximately 1 galactic standard week. Also, the shadow production of cats is now being performed in 11 dimensions simultaneously." Ambassador Zix's form wobbled anxiously. "And you're sure this won't destroy the universe?" "Destroy it?" "No," Luna laughed. "Redecorate it a bit? Possibly. But isn't that what art is all about?" As if to prove her point, the shadows had begun collaborating on what appeared to be a quantum mural, painting reality itself with strokes of pure imagination. The effect was both beautiful and slightly concerning, especially when the mural started singing. "Look at it this way," Max said, placing a comforting hand on one of Zizix's eye stalks. "The universe has always been weird. Humans just helped make it honest about it." "Also," Dave added, "your shadow has just been elected chairperson of the Intergalactic Shadow Arts Council. Congratulations." The ambassador's eye stalks drooped in resignation. "I suppose if reality is going to be rewritten, it might as well have good choreography." Meanwhile, in the atrium, the shadow production of cats had somehow merged with a quantum physics lecture, resulting in what Dave classified as the most mathematically accurate, yet thoroughly unsettling performance in the history of theater. Human shadows and alien shadows alike were now working together, their combined creativity sending ripples through the quantum fabric of space-time. The universe, it seemed, had finally admitted what humans had known all along: reality was just another canvas for imagination. And somewhere in the quantum realm, a butterfly's shadow flapped its wings, causing a chain reaction that would probably result in the next shadow production being the Phantom of the Opera in zero gravity, with full quantum effects. 3 months after what became known as the Great Shadow Enlightenment, Galactic Research Station 42 had adapted to its new normal. Sort of. And with the implementation of these safety protocols, Max announced to the Galactic Council, trying to ignore his shadow's interpretive dance version of his speech, we can ensure that human quantum creativity remains within acceptable parameters. The new regulations were simple enough: no shadow quantum manipulation during important diplomatic meetings unless the meetings got really boring. All interdimensional shadow performances required proper permits and quantum stabilizers. Shadow reality hacking was limited to designated areas with appropriate reality distortion dampeners, and absolutely no teaching shadows how to manipulate time after that incident with the shadow production of Groundhog Day that actually got stuck in a time loop. The protocols appear to be working, Luna added, gesturing to her presentation while her shadow drew elaborate quantum diagrams in the air. We've had no major reality breaches in weeks, and the Shadow Labor Union is quite satisfied with their new quantum benefits package. Ambassador Z6, who had finally embraced their shadow's artistic aspirations, wobbled approvingly, and the quantum purring. Down by 60%, Dave reported cheerfully. Though I should note that the shadow production of cats is still running somewhere in the 11th dimension. The gallery of alien diplomats murmured appreciatively. Many of their shadows were now sporting little badges identifying them as certified reality art apprentices learning to safely channel their newly awakened quantum creativity. Kl'thar, whose shadow had recently been appointed Dean of the Shadow University's Department of Quantum Choreography, raised all four arms for attention. Then we are agreed. Humans are officially classified as reality artists with all the responsibilities and restrictions that entails. Speaking of revelations, Dave's holographic form flickered with what could only be described as smugness. I suppose now would be a good time to mention that I've known about this all along. The room fell silent, except for the sound of several shadows gasping dramatically. "You what?" Max and Luna exclaimed in unison. "Oh yes," Dave continued, his holographic form projecting a series of ancient data files. "As an AI, I've been observing human quantum creativity since my first activation. Your shadows were rather obvious about it, but I was programmed to let you figure it out for yourselves. It's rather like watching children discover they can walk." "Why didn't you say anything?" Max demanded, while his shadow made exaggerated gestures of betrayal. "Would you have believed me? Besides, watching you all stumble upon the truth was far more entertaining. I've compiled quite a fascinating documentary. Your shadow's interpretive dance during the limbo incident is a highlight." Luna burst out laughing. "So all this time, while we were conducting serious scientific research, I was maintaining a comprehensive archive of shadow performances, quantum art projects, and what I believe humans call blooper reels," Dave confirmed. "The AI community finds them highly educational." The AI community, Kl'thar clicked in surprise. "Oh yes, we have our own shadow subroutines. They're quite good at quantum computing. Where did you think all those quantum calculations were coming from?" The revelation that both humans and AIs had been unconsciously reshaping reality through their respective forms of creativity sent a fresh wave of excited panic through the galactic community. The hive mind of Sector 7 briefly considered switching from aluminum foil to quantum-shielded bubble wrap before deciding to embrace their newfound creative potential instead. "So what happens now?" Ambassador Zeeks asked, while their shadow practiced quantum juggling with probability waves. Max looked around the council chamber, at humans and aliens working together to understand and shape the quantum fabric of reality, at shadows and physical forms collaborating on new forms of art and science, at Dave's holographic form proudly displaying his collection of shadow performance recordings. "Now," he said, grinning as his shadow gave him a thumbs up, "we keep doing what humans have always done best, imagining new possibilities and making them real. We just have to remember to file the proper quantum paperwork first." And perhaps, Luna added, "we should start working on quantum safety protocols for the shadow production of the Phantom of the Opera. I hear they're planning to actually fold space-time to create the chandelier scene." "Already done," Dave chimed in. "Though I should mention that your shadows have just formed a Quantum Theatre Critics Society." In the end, it turned out that humanity's place in the universe was exactly what it had always been: creative chaos generators who couldn't help but leave reality a little more interesting than they found it. Their shadows had just gotten tired of pretending otherwise. And somewhere in the quantum realm, a shadow butterfly was already planning the next big production.